And so what we're going to learn about today is we're going to learn about how to FOIL polynomials together. And this is on our practice final. It's a very easy concept. You're going to use it a lot in intermediate algebra. In intermediate algebra, we cover FOILing, multiplying, adding and subtracting, and then we also add in factoring, which will be new for the most part. But we're today going to focus on how to FOIL. Now, when I talk about FOIL, the F stands for the first times the first. Okay, so the first term times the first term. Then we have the O, and that's the outside, times the outside. And then the I is the inside times the inside. And then finally the L is the last times the last. Okay, so we're going to learn how to FOIL today. Now, FOIL has 4 letters in it. And so that means when we look at these, when we FOIL, you've got to have 4 terms total, 2 by 2. So we're going to go ahead and FOIL this out. We'll start with a simple one here. And we're going to take our time and we're going to learn how to FOIL out this polynomial. Okay, so we've got a binomial times another binomial. And we're going to learn how to FOIL. And what we're going to do is we're going to multiply. And then we're going to combine the middles together if we can. So first times the first. Okay, that means we take the first in each grouping and we multiply them together. So we use arrows to represent these. So first times the first. Okay, first times first. What would that be? 3 times 5 makes it 15. And x times another x is going to make that then x squared, because x and x makes it x squared. So the first piece is going to be 15x squared. Then we look at the outside times the outside. So the outside times the outside is right there. Okay? Outside and outside. Outside and outside. And what is that going to be? 3 times a negative 3, that makes it a minus 9. And only 1x, so that makes it a minus 9x there. And we're going to do several of these. FOILing is very easy to do. Next, we need the inside times the inside. So the inside times the inside, well, 2 times 5 makes it 10x. And then finally, last times last. And the last times the last is 2 times a negative 3. 2 times a negative 3 would then be a negative 6. Now, what we need to do here is we need to see if we can combine some like terms together. And like terms mean they have the same variables involved. In the middles, a lot of times we'll have like terms, okay? And these are like terms here. We always write our polynomial with the highest power first. So 15x squared is first. And then the minus 9x and the positive 10x, those can go together. Minus 9 plus 10 is a 1. We don't have to write the 1. We can just write an x. And then what's left over? Minus 6. So there is your answer after we FOILed it out. Let's try a couple more of these. We're going to FOIL these out. They're not difficult at all to do. And these are nice, easy questions, and you're going to see them again in intermediate algebra. In intermediate algebra, we expand on this into factoring, and we look at how to multiply larger polynomials together. So again, we're going to have to FOIL. We're going to multiply these together. And let's say we have an 8x minus 3 and a 2x plus 9. And we want to FOIL. So we take our time and multiply them out. Draw the arrows. That way we don't miss anything. So we need the first times the first. So first times the first would be right here. 8 times 2, well, 8 times 2 makes it 16. X and x makes it x squared. Then we've got outside times the outside. So that's outside and outside here. And that's 8x times 9. And 8 times 9 is a 72. So that's going to be a 72x. And I don't want you to miss these questions on your final, because these are easy questions here. Next, we need the I, inside and inside. Now make sure you see that negative here. Okay, so inside and inside, see what we've got here. Minus 3 times 2. Minus 3 times 2 makes it a 6, and it has the x with it. And then we have last times the last here. And that's minus 3 times 9. That's a minus 27. And then we look in the middle. Can the middles go together? Yes. We'll do one here in a moment where they can't. These can go together. And these can go together. And what do you have? You have a 72 minus 6. And 72 minus 6. That leaves you then with a 66x. So you now have your final answer, 16x squared plus 66x minus 27. There's that one. And we're going to do a couple more just to make sure we have these down, because these are easy questions. And they're the last topic that we need to cover. And we're going to go ahead and FOIL again. It doesn't have to be an x. It can be a different variable. So we're going to learn how to FOIL this one out. It doesn't have to be an x. It can be different variables. We do the same process. So first times the first. Numbers get multiplied together. So 4 times 9. That's a 36. Bless you. And we have an a times c. So that's just an ac. Right? They can't go together. So we just they combine it all. So we just write the ac there. Next, we need the outside times the outside. The outside times the outside. 4 times 4 is 16. And then we've got a and b. So those are written like that, ab. So again, don't make these harder than they need to be. There's a lot of questions like this. I put them on here on purpose to make sure we have some easy questions on your final also. Next, we have minus 3 times 9. Minus 3 times 9 is a minus 27. And that's going to be a minus 27c. And then finally, the last times the last is minus 3 times 4. That's a minus 12. And what's our variable? B. Now, why can I not put the middles together? I can't put the middles together because these are different, right? Nothing can go together. This one's AC, this one's AB, this one's just a C, and this one's just a B. They're all different, so they can't be combined together. So this would then be your final answer. Let's go ahead and FOIL out one more of these, and then we'll go through some questions on your practice final. Let's go ahead and FOIL out one more. So let's see how we would FOIL this one out. Now, the powers, the exponents here, they're going to add together when we multiply. So let's go ahead and FOIL, and we take our first times the first. So 5 times that 2, that makes it a 10. And how many x's do we have? We have 3. We're going to add 2 more, so that's going to make it x to the 5th. Right? The numbers just on top, the exponents, they add together. Then we have the outside times the outside. So the outside times the outside is 5 times a negative 3. It's a minus 15. And that's going to be an x cubed there. Next is inside times the inside. And watch out for your negative there. So inside and inside. And we've got minus 6 times 2. That makes it a minus 12. And it looks like it's going to be x squared. And then finally, we've got last times the last. And the last times the last here, negative and negative, watch your signs, negative and negative makes it a positive. And 6 times 3 is an 18. So there's your final, finished, multiplied answer. And again, in intermediate, you're going to do a lot more of these, and you're going to add on factoring as well. Now, we do have some time left, so I want us to go over some questions that I know we struggle with on our practice final. You've got all of these worked out. So just so everyone knows, you've got that packet that I gave you last week. Everyone's got that packet, right? Okay, now what's in this packet? You've got a practice final. As long as you fill out that practice final, you're going to get 15 points. So complete it, and you get the 15 points. So use my answer key if you need to. I would recommend just trying to work it out on your own, but if you get confused on any of them, look and see how I worked it out step by step. Okay, then you use that, you kind of make your notes off of that, and then I want you to do the take-home final, which the take-home final is in this packet as well. And what do we know about the take-home final? It looks just like the practice final. Different numbers in a different order. Okay, these are the topics that you need to be successful in intermediate. So I'm making sure we cover those topics. And then what are we going to have next Wednesday? Next Wednesday, we're going to have our in-class final. And what is it going to look like? It is going to look just like the practice and just like the take-home. So those have 30 questions. Your in-class one is going to have 30 questions. And it is worth a lot of points, but you're going to know exactly what's on there. If you study the practice final and you do the take-home final, and when you come to class next Wednesday, you will do great on the in-class final. Students always do better on the final than any other exam because we spend a lot of time going over it. You've got a take-home one that reinforces those concepts, and you know exactly what I expect. So it can really help your grade a lot. So let's now look at some of these questions that I know students struggle with on the practice final. Okay, so I'm just going to look at ones I know we struggle with a lot for different reasons. One of the ones that I know we struggle with is question 7. It's not a hard question. And I've given different versions of this final for many, many semesters, so I know which ones we struggle the most with. And question 7 is an easy question, but students don't finish it out completely. They only give me half the answer. It's a very easy question, and I don't want us to miss it. But what happens is students forget to do the other half. So we should know on this one that these are called vertical angles. And what does that mean? That means they form an X and they equal. Okay, students don't usually struggle with that part. That's not where students make the mistake at. They write the equation. So 2x plus 45 equals 5x minus 6. We don't usually make the mistake here. We solve it like we always would. Okay, so no mistakes are made so far usually. Okay, and that's going to be 45 and 6. That makes it, what, a negative 51, I believe. Okay, and then we move that 5x over. So minus 3x equals now minus 51. Divide by our negative 3. And this is where students make the mistake and stop. Okay, they divide, they get the correct answer. And 51 divided by that 3, that makes it a 17. But that is not your complete answer. Okay, where students make the mistake is they stop here. This is not your answer. To get full credit for this question, what do we need to do? To get full credit, we need to take the 17, and we need to plug it back in. That is not my answer. What we get when we plug it back in should be the same, and those are my answers. So when we plug that 17 back in, that gives us our complete answer. And they should be the same. So now we've got our answer, which is going to be 2 times 17, plus that 45, that's 79 degrees. What's the other one going to be? It should be the same thing. And it should give you that 79 degrees. So 5 times your 17 is 85, minus that 6, that gives you the same 79 degrees. So what is my actual answer going to be? These two numbers, 79 degrees. Not that. What happens is students sometimes get in a hurry and they stop here. And if you did this, you would probably get half to 3/4 of the points. To get full credit, you need to plug your values back in. So make sure you actually take that answer, plug it back in to get full credit. Okay, and that's just something I've seen happen over the years. Students work it out exactly right, but they forget to do the last part. And so what I'm trying to pick out is questions I know students make a mistake on. Okay, and I don't know that we covered 10, so we'll look at 10 and 16 as well. And they're just foiling again. Yeah, that might be something we didn't quite cover on the foiling a minute ago, but let's look at 10. Okay, question 10. 7x minus 8y quantity squared. Now for this one, I don't know how many times I've seen students just go through and square. And then they say, oh, well, 7 squared is 49, and 8 squared is 64. So they write it down as 49x squared and 84y squared. And that's not correct. Okay, what we need to do is when you have a square like this one, we write it out twice. Okay, so write it out twice, because square means you've got 2 of them. So write it out twice. And now what did we cover just a moment ago? Well, just a moment ago, right, we talked about foiling. So when it's squared like this, you write it out twice, and then you apply the FOIL method. In intermediate, you'll look at cubes and higher powers. But in this class, we stop at squares. And now what do we do to FOIL? Well, FOIL, we take the first times the first. So 7 times 7 is 49 x squared. And then we've got 7 times a negative 8. 7 times a negative 8, that's going to be a minus 56. xy, because they both have an x and a y. And then we'll do the inside, which again is a negative 56 xy. And then last times last, negative times negative makes it a positive, and that's going to be 64 y squared. Now, what do we know about the middles again? Those are the same in this case. So those are the same. They go together. And that gives you now 49x squared minus, I believe that's 112 xy. Let me double check though. I always like to use a calculator and double check. Yep, minus 112 xy plus 64 y squared. Now, if you just try to square the first and square the last, see, you would miss the middle. So on this type of problem, what do? Write it out twice and FOIL. Not difficult at all. But we need to make sure that you do that. Same thing on 16. These are easy questions, and I do not want you to miss them. 16 is 9x minus 7y quantity squared. What do? We write it out twice, and then we FOIL. Nine times 9 is 81. So that's going to be an 81x squared. And we do the outside times the outside. Just make sure you get all four. The order doesn't really matter, but we normally write them in the same order every time, just so you have consistency. So 9 times a negative 7. That's a minus 63, x and y. Inside and inside. That's another negative 63 xy. And last times last, negative and negative makes it positive. 7 times 7 is a 49. Y times y is y squared. Middles can go together again, and that gives you then 81x squared minus, adding those together, it looks like, 116, I believe. Or sorry, 120, yep, 126, sorry about that. 126 xy, right? And it's negative. And then a 49y squared. And that would be your final answer. And you're going to see a very similar question on your final. Another question that I know students struggle with a lot, and it's a commonly missed one, is question 14. This has been a while since we've done these. So let's review how we work with mixed fractions. I know it's been a while since we've done these, and I'm going to add another example just so you have an extra one to look at. So we'll do this one, and then I'll add another example of adding mixed fractions together. Okay, so what do we look at? Well, the way I look at these is I'm going to separate it out. And I'm going to first look at the whole part. And for the whole part, we have a minus 3 and a positive 6, and that leaves you then with a 3. So that's my whole part. Okay? I'm going to write that. So just take the whole parts, put them together. The signs go along with it. What about now the fractions? Well, for the fractions, the sign comes with it. We have a minus 3/5, and we have a positive 3/7. All right. and we need to put these together. Well, when we add fractions, what do we need? Least common denominator. And what's the least common denominator of 5 and 7? That's 35. So that means we need to take that negative 3/5, and we need to multiply that by 7 over 7. And the 3/7, we multiply that by a 5 over 5. Now we've got a minus 21 over 35. And we have a 15 over 35. And those can now go together. And that, bless you. And that leaves you then with a negative 6 over 35. Okay, so I'll give you a moment to digest what we did. So what did we do? We took the whole parts and we put those together. Then we did the fractions over to the side. We did those together. Now we need to get our answer as a mixed fraction. 3 minus 6 over 35. Well, we need to make sure we can put these together. And we need a common denominator, so I'm going to borrow from this 3. And I'm going to borrow from that 3. I'm going to make that a 2, and I'm going to make that 35 out of 35. Why am I making it a 35 out of 35? Because 35 out of 35 is what? 1. So see, I borrowed. Okay, I borrowed 1 from that 3, and that way I've got my factor of 1 here. Now we can put these together, and 35 minus 6. Well, 35 minus 6, that's going to make that now a 29 out of 35, and what's in front of it? 2. So what would your final finished mixed fraction look like? 2 and 29 over 35. Let's do another example because I know that this is probably one of the most commonly missed questions. Students make mistakes on this one more than about any other one. So I'm going to make up another one, and I'll just switch the order around and we'll work with this. So how about minus 9 and 7/8 plus 12 and, let's say, 1/4. Okay, so this is another example. This is going to be like number 14. You just want to do another example because over the years, I've seen this question missed more than almost any other. So what do? Well, we take our fractions and we put those together first with the whole part. The whole part goes together, and minus 9 and 12, what does that leave you with? Watch your signs. Minus 9 plus 12, it leaves you with 3 again. What about the fractions? I made this one a little bit easier. For the fractions, we have a minus 7/8 and a positive 1/4. So the least common denominator, 4 and 8 would be an 8. So what do we now do? Well, 7/8 is already done. The 1/4, we multiply that by 2 over 2. And that leaves me then with a minus 7/8 plus 2/8, which is then minus 5/8. Slow down to make sure you see how that works. Is everyone okay with what we did there? So you will have a similar question on your final. What do we do when we see this question? We take the whole numbers and we combine them together. Then we take our fractions and we combine them together with the common denominator. Once we get to this point, how do we put it all together? We need to borrow. So we're going to borrow 1 from this 3. And we're going to take that down to 2, and that's going to be 8 over 8. Why am I using 8 over 8? Because this fraction has a denominator of an 8 here. If that would have been a 12, you use a 12 over 12. Or if it was a 13, you use 13 over 13. So this is an 8, so we use an 8 over 8. And now we can put these together. And now we have our 2 out in front, our whole number. And 8 minus 5, well, 8 minus 5 is a 3. So what's my final finished answer then? 2 and 3/8. Are we okay with that one? Because that one will be on there. Remember, these are going to be worth 10 points apiece, so we need to make sure that we get all of them right. So that takes care of that one. Another one that we sometimes struggle with, it's very simple and easy to go through and easy to work on, is question 24. And where students make a mistake on question 24 is how they again write their answer. This is an easy question. Students make a mistake in the answer part. So we're going to make sure we understand what the correct answer should be. So we need to graph, and we need to find our intercepts for y equals -4. Now, y equals -4. Remember, this is your y-axis. And so we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's at y equals -4, right? So this is going to be a horizontal line. Why? Because when you only have the y part, it's a horizontal. When you only have the x part, it's vertical. When you have both, it's a diagonal line. Now, where does this line cross the axes? Remember, this is your x-axis. So when we talk about our x-intercept, do we have any? No, we have none. Here's where students make a mistake. And I may have to take off a point or two if you did this. So the y-intercept. The y-intercept is not -4. The y-intercept is right here, and that is at 0, -4. So what would your y-intercept look like? 0, -4, not just -4. Okay, so if you just put -4 down, I would probably, and these are worth 10 points for each question, I probably have to take off 1 or 2 points. So make sure when you write your answer, bless you, that you write it as an ordered pair like this. That way you get full credit. Why is there no x-intercept? Because it never crosses this x-axis at all. Same thing on 25. Okay, and we'll look at 25 because students sometimes make a mistake with this one because they're not careful with moving the numbers around. We want to go ahead and graph this one. We want to find our intercepts. Well, when we go to graph this, we need to make sure that it's either solve for x or solve for y. You've got x and y, you solve it for y. This one only has the x, so the only thing that we can do is solve it for the x. If you've got a y, you solve it for y. If you don't have any y's, then you have no choice but to solve it for x. So you're going to move that 6 over. And that makes it x equals now a -6. Where do students make a mistake? I see it happen many times. They leave that as a +6. But what do you need to do? Move it over. So now you see it's a -6. X lines, remember, are on the x-axis, so they're going to be vertical. And that is this line right here. What are my intercepts? Okay, again, where do students make a mistake? You make a mistake by not writing the answer out completely. This is the point, -6, 0. So my x-intercept is minus 6, 0, right? Not just minus 6. So make sure that you write it out as an ordered pair. The x goes first, right? Because it's over 6 units. It's not moved up or down any. Now, what about the y-intercept? Do we have one? No. Why not? Because it never crosses this y-axis, does it? So the y-intercept would be none. I picked those two because these are simple questions. Students make mistakes on them. They leave it as just a minus 6, or they forget to move that 6 over to begin with. We've got a few more minutes, and I'll look at a couple more of these. And then I'll let you out early because you have lots of things to do. You've got all your homework that you need to turn in next week if you haven't finished it yet. You've got this take-home final to work on and your practice final. So we'll look at a couple more of these. And then I'll let you out a little bit early. But let's look at question 7. Another commonly missed question, far and away more than even the applications, is question 7. We have seen this question. All these questions, the applications, you've seen on previous exams. Okay, so you've already seen them all already on different exams. That's where these came from, or your homework, or both. Question 7. Students make a mistake on this one a lot. We had it on our second exam a lot of time, or actually it might have been on our first one. Students make mistakes with this because of the signs and not being careful with how they all went together. So a baseball team won 4 of its games by 3 runs, lost 1 game by 5 runs, lost 1 game by 7 runs, and finished the season by winning its last 2 games by 4 runs. Expresses a real number. How many more or fewer games did the team score versus their opponent in the 8 games? So we are going to look at these as a positive number for the wins, a negative number for the loss. And we're going to take the number of games, and we're going to multiply that by the number of runs, and that's going to give me my total. And so we're going to make a table. And again, if it's positive, that means it's a win. We won those games. If it's negative, we lost them. And then we're going to add them all together, and we'll get our final answer. It's a simple question. It's easy as long as you're careful. So a team won 4 of its games by 3 runs. So 4 games, 3 runs, we multiply across, that's 12. Lost 1 game by 5 runs. So it's lost, so we're going to put a negative. By 5 runs, we'll put the 5 here. Multiply across, that gives you a negative 5. Lost 1 game by 7 runs. So minus 1, because you lost the game. 7 runs makes it a minus 7. And then they finished the season by winning the last 2 games. So they won those by 4 runs each. And 2 times 4 makes it now an 8. So what do we have? We add them together. We've got 12 minus 5 minus 7 plus 8. You can add them together however you want. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and put the positives together. So 12 and 8 makes it 20. And the negatives can go together. Minus 5 and minus 7 makes it a minus 12. We put those together, and what do we end up with? 8. Bless you. Okay, 8 games. That is a commonly missed question. How do we do this one? We make this table. If you make this table, it is easy. And you won't miss it. And I do not want you to miss these questions. I can understand some of the more difficult ones, like, for example, question 5. Okay, students might make a mistake in the setup on that one. But the others, you should do well on this. You should understand what to do and not have any trouble at all. I want to look at a couple more just to make sure we don't make mistakes and get confused. We've covered these before, but let's look at question 16. Where students may make a mistake on 16 is they might try to multiply instead of just add them together. This is not a FOIL question. We are not going to FOIL these out. All we are going to do is combine them together. We talked about this last week. This one is usually not missed, but sometimes students try to multiply and it's not multiplication. And they get confused with the FOIL. So this one, we're adding and subtracting these together. And in some cases on these, we've got parentheses that we don't need. So if you've got extra parentheses, we'll just get rid of them. The first set, there's nothing in front. So it just comes down as a 5x to the 4th minus 4x squared plus x. So that parentheses was not needed. However, the next one, what's in front of it? The next one has a negative in front, so we've got to distribute that negative through. And that leaves you then with a minus 5x cubed minus 7x squared minus 8x. And on the last one, that plus, we can just distribute it through. It doesn't do anything. We don't need those parentheses. So then that's a 4x squared minus x. Whatever you do, do not try to multiply these together. This is not multiplication. All we are doing here is adding them together. We are combining terms that are similar, that are like terms together. Not multiplying. Okay, this is not FOILing. Do not multiply them together. No multiplication. This is simply addition and subtraction. We write our highest power first, which is a 5x to the 4th. So that's gone. Then we've got a minus 5x cubed. Gone. Now, on the x squareds, we can add them together because we have multiple x squareds. And so we've got a minus 4, minus 7. That makes it a minus 11. Okay, minus 11 plus 4, that's going to make that then a 7. So that's going to be a minus 7 x squared. Gone, gone, and gone. Just be careful with your signs. And then we've got an x, we've got an 8x, which makes it so that makes it a minus 7x, minus another one makes it a minus 8x total. That is your then final finished answer. Do not, again, try to multiply. This is not multiplication. All we are doing here is adding them together. So there's no multiplication. I think that pretty much takes care of everything. Another one that I see students make mistakes on. It's very easy. So this will be our last one to really look at. Question 17, order of operations. And, I've seen students miss this one a lot, and I'm really not sure why. Because I think it just goes back to students don't follow order of operations correctly. So if I give you this one, this is a simple problem as long as you're careful. Okay, we have to do an order of operations. So order of operations is the fundamental component of all of our mathematics. We have to do things in a specific order. And, you can skip steps if you want. You can do multiple operations at once. I'm just going to go ahead and just do one step at a time. So inside our parentheses, they go first. Inside our parentheses, we have multiplication. So 2 times 5, that makes it 10. Remember, we multiply first before we add. And you can skip steps as long as you're careful. I don't mind that at all. Now, what about here? 9 and 10 go together, makes it 19. And what do we still have in front? Negative, so that comes down. Now what do? Now our parentheses are gone. Exponents are next. So parentheses at the top, then exponents. So 11 squared is 121. Next we multiply. And 7 times 11, that's a 77. Take your time if you need to write out the steps, write them down. If you want to skip steps, you can do that. Just be very, very careful. Now what do? All the parentheses are gone, all the multiplications gone, all the powers are gone. We just simply add them across. So now we just put them together, right across. So we've got 121, add 77, subtract off 19, and what do we get for our final answer? 179. That's how you do that question. I've seen students make mistakes because they'll add first and then multiply. There's lots of ways where students can make mistakes. Okay, so I think that gives you a good foundation for your practice final. So work through that. Now, what do we know next week? Let's talk about what's going to happen next week. Okay, next week we're going to have our final. And on your final, what can you bring? What can you have on your final? For your final, you can have a page of notes, or note cards. If you want to bring in 15, 20 note cards, that's fine. If you want to do each one on a note card, that's fine too. So you can have either one page of notes or your note cards. What else do you need to bring? You need to bring a calculator. You can bring some scratch paper. You can also bring in those handouts. Remember, what am I talking about by those handouts? Those handouts I'm talking about is, I just had it here a minute ago, is, it's up in that pile somewhere. Let me find it real quick. I just showed it to you earlier today. I know I just had it earlier. Find it here. You know what one I'm talking about. The one that says, oh, here it is. This one. Okay, this one. You can have this handout. The one that says find the equation of a line. So this is the one I'm talking about. This 3-page handout, you can have that. You can use this on your final if you want. You're probably going to need it for a couple of questions. That way you don't have to memorize things. I don't really think you need to memorize things, so you can use this on your final. Again, algebra is a skills course. I don't think there's any real use in making you memorize things. I'm more concerned of, can you solve the question? What is due next week? Just so we know what's due next week. Your practice final. Your take-home final. Your homework for Chapter 3. Those are all due next week. So please make sure that you get those turned in next week. Make sure you bring in your homework, your take-home final, and your practice one. Those are in that packet, so just bring in you don't have to do the practice Chapter 3 exam. All I need to see is your homework for Chapter 3, take-home and practice final. And if you're missing an exam still, which I know a couple of you might be, make sure that you get that exam finished and completed before class next week. Make sure you get it done before class starts. That way you're ready for the final, and I'll be able to grade your homework while you're taking your exam. I'll be able to grade your final. I'll have everything ready, and I should be able to give you your final grade before you leave next week. So I'll see everyone next week, but please make sure that you're here next week to take your final. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and turn it in, I can take that today. If you want to wait and turn it in next week, you can do that too. Here. Yep. I'll get that graded for you. Yeah, if you want to turn in your Chapter 3 homework, you can do that. That's fine. If you want to wait, that's fine too. Okay, make sure I got everybody checked off here for being here. Okay. So I will see everyone next week. If you've got questions, I'll be here before class. If you want to ask some questions next week, you can do that. So we're going to try to start our exam at 8:30. Sure. Sure. Which one?
I don't know if you already went over it.
Let me stop this real quick.